Thank you so much for hosting us here at your office.
You're welcome, Jonah.
Let's start first of all with something very close to your work and what you've done for most of your life, and that's the legal side of our country. The United Party for National Development government is proposing amendments to the Constitution, and you were recently quoted advising the United Party for National Development to abandon this project of the Constitution amendments that they've proposed. Why is that?
I thought I'd said enough about this matter during my last program, but if you think I should paraphrase myself, I will do so. Look, the long and short of my piece of advice to UPND is this. Maybe you want to do this constitutional amendment. Maybe you mean well. Maybe you think it will help the country. But please do it properly. Ensure that you marshal consensus. Ensure that the process is transparent. Ensure that it broadly gets on board as many citizens as possible. That's the long and short of my piece of advice. You probably mean well, probably your intentions are good, but please just get to do this process properly. And how it is done properly is not something new. It has been done before. The precedents are there. So we're not asking anybody to reinvent the wheel. That's really my honest piece of advice to our colleagues in the UPND.
There's an argument that there's one way in which this has been done before, but
which way
it's not the way that you're saying is the precedent on how, history has demonstrated how this can be done. But there's also the thought that that's not the only way that the Constitution can be amended. And the UPND is saying, well, this way is another way that the Constitution can be amended, this way that they have charted.
It will not succeed. It will not succeed. That I can bet my last dollar. They may have their way now, but it will be an exercise in futility, because when the next government comes and they will not be there ad infinitum, they will just throw this in the dustbin. Is that how HH wants to be remembered? Surely not, in my view. Okay? So the issue of we have the numbers should not be the argument. The issue that we have the numbers should not be the argument, because I'll tell you, numbers in politics lie. It is in mathematics where numbers don't lie. In politics, numbers lie. So, if I were at the center of this, I would make sure that I get into place a process whose product is going to stand the test of time. Any other way, it's a short-term victory, and I don't think anybody wants to be, to get involved in a process where you want to be remembered in the short term and not in the long term, and not leave a legacy in the long term. That's my honest view.
The Minister of Justice has been on record as having said, while this introduction by the UPND may be new now, but there's been several commissions that have been set up to review the Constitution.
Yes.
And she argues that these ones must then not be considered as being redundant. We should look at these proposals that were there then, and they should still be valid as consensus that has been built over the years, culminating into what the government is proposing today. What do you think about this line of thought by the Minister of Justice?
It is not new, John. It's not a new argument. That was the position of PF pre-2011. Michael Sata campaigned on the pedestal that he is going to give the Zambian people a new constitution, a repealed constitution. Repeal the 1991 constitution with its 1995 amendments and give the Zambian people a completely new product. And he argued that that new product did not have to involve the people again, because the people have spoken, going way back to 1972-73 with the Chona Commission, ending up with the Mungomba Constitutional Review Commission. When PF won, and we sold that argument to Anya Sulungwe and the group, their view was that, no, there are people whose views were not captured in the Chona Commission. There are people whose views were not captured in the Mvunga Constitutional Review Commission of 1989-1990, which was short-lived because of the multi-party coming into being the multi-partyism. There were people that did not submit and probably were not even there during the Manakatwe Constitutional Review Commission of 1995-96. There were people that did not participate in the Mungomba Constitutional Review Commission. And these people are still citizens of this country. And therefore, they need to participate if they so wish. And Michael Sata gave in to that argument. Okay? So the argument that we already have submissions from the past really stands on very, very flimsy ground, on quicksand. Because there are citizens that you need to hear out now. So I think colleagues in the Upnd must learn from history in a situation like this. To try to do it the way we think it must be done may not earn them accolades. If it does, it may be in the short term.
When you look at the provisions that have been put in this proposed amendment of the Constitution, they say, and a lot of people supporting them, I acknowledge there are a lot of people that are opposed, but a lot of people supporting them believe that these are progressive. And because the UPND has a mandate only up until next year, 2026, then they should work within that mandate that the people of this country have given them. Why should they project beyond what they've been given? Hence, them working within the time that people have voted for them to be in office.
You see, that is a Chiluba argument. If you were there, or if you remember the reasons given for Mr. President Chiluba pushing for a third term, what was the argument? Allow the president to finish the projects which he has started. Only him knows about these projects. So this personalization of national interest, that at each and every particular stage of the life of this country, the interest of this country is reposed in one man or one woman or in a small group of people, is what is causing problems to our country. Okay? If indeed the Constitution has to be amended, if indeed the Constitution has let us down, which is something that those pushing for this have to prove, surely any other group of citizens taking over the reins of power must hear this out from the citizens. and act accordingly. I've never heard myself, we've had cases, running now, as you know, before the Constitutional Court. I've never heard the people of Zambia saying we need to amend or repeal the Constitution because it has let us down, because it has faltered. This is coming from the politicians. And this is where this process has had the hiccups.
But the
this
politicians are representatives of the people.
Yes, let me just finish. This is where it has created obstacles. Okay? Granted that politicians are representatives of the people. But I go back to the same argument that I've held before. Which one of the MPs can tell you today that they are the meeting in their constituency and the people demanded for a new constitution? Get them to an interview. 156 of them. Just ask them, when did you hold a meeting about CDF in your constituency and the issue of the amendment of the constitution came up? None of them will tell you that that issue ever came up. The representatives of the people. When this process started, Minister Haimbe then, as Minister of Justice, said, we are just going to deal with the non-contentious issues. Even at that time, the question that begged the answer was who was going to decide that this is contentious and this is non-contentious? That answer has not been given. Secondly, when you look at the proposals now, they are extremely contentious. Extremely contentious. If you are going to increase the number of nominated MPs from 8 to beyond 8, that's a contentious issue. Where would they come from? What is the criterion you are going to use to get these, whatever number of MPs that you want to bring in? You are proposing to change the electoral system from the first past the post, which has been a system we have used from 1964, to the quota system, or to the PR system. Isn't that a contentious matter that requires the consensus of the Zambian people? Surely it is. Is the problem about the high cost of living today predicated on the reason that because we don't have enough women represented in parliament? Do we have a skyrocketing youth unemployment today because we don't have youth represented in parliament? Do we have the energy crisis that we are facing today because we do not have people living with disabilities represented in parliament? So the point is that they are fundamental priority areas upon which the Upnd was voted, which in my view, Upnd should pay attention to. So that when 2026 comes, they're able to say, this is what we said in 2021, we have achieved this, and surely we need another mandate. The Constitution is not one of them.
I take it from your arguments here that you also are not in support of the proposed amendments to the Constitution that this government has presented?
I don't support.
Even the amendments, apart from the fact that you feel this has been rushed, you feel that there is need for consensus, you also don't agree with these proposed amendments.
In fact, my argument is not about it being rushed. My argument is that it is a process which leaves the people behind. That's basically my argument. And my plea to UPND is get people on board. Is that a very difficult plea? No. And my argument further to that is that if you leave the people behind, you may succeed now, but surely your legacy will be checkered for the future. That's basically my argument.
When you talk about the people, I believe you're talking about the general public. But
Yes.
are you feeling left behind too?
Yes. I am feeling left behind.
Even if you understand the amendments that have been proposed.
Yes. I don't know. I don't know. There are a lot of questions on the how, which have left me behind. How are you going to pick on the women, the people with disabilities, and the youth? Okay? Surely in the proposals, they should have included the how. These proposals, John, are hanging. And because they are hanging, I find it very difficult to form an opinion, a judicious view on whether or not this is a good process. Because they're hanging. If I sat with the Minister of Justice, the way you're seated before me, I can ask a lot of how questions. And if she can answer those how questions satisfactorily, then it creates a completely different complexion to this discourse. But to be going to groups of people and start lecturing to them that the reason why you want to do this is because of this, and people are just quiet and they're just looking at you, that's not how it is done. Okay? That's not how it is done. People must be allowed to participate. I want to participate. Okay? If there are people that have already participated, like it has been said, there are submissions out there, publish them. We want to see them. Are we asking for too much? No. Is this going to circumvent the process? No. We just want to know who has said what. Verbatim. That's what the other constitutional review commissions have done. I've heard the argument that, no, you see, this is just an amendment to the Constitution, and the only institution given those powers is the Constitution, is Parliament. Given powers in the Constitution is Parliament. Granted. It still goes back to the question. Just get me one member of Parliament who has held a meeting in his or her constituency, and the issue of the Constitution has come up.
So, with all this having been said, some of the opposition members believe that there is an ulterior motive of why government is trying to do this and why they're trying to do it now. With your reservations, is this a fair feeling to have amongst these opposition political parties?
My character is built on truth. And I don't want to attribute bad faith to somebody which I can't prove. I don't want to make political statements which are empty and which are meaningless. I want to be factual. There is no evidence that this is intended to achieve a certain motive. At least I don't have the evidence. The quarrel that I have with this process is the methodology which is being applied. And at the end of the day, you call it a process of the people. That's the crux of the matter. That's the bone of contention that I have. So I'm not part of the opposition political parties that are saying, no, but HH wants to give himself, a further term of office. They want to extend his, the term of office from 5 to 7. I'm not interested in those arguments. I'm interested in the facts that are before me. The facts before me are that you can't prove to me that Zambia is underdeveloped, because since 1964, it has not had the adequate women representation in parliament. You can't prove to me that Zambia is underdeveloped today, because since 1964, it hasn't had the sufficient youth representation.
But that's part of development. I mean, development is not just infrastructure development. Development is carrying people along. Representation is a part of development.
Yes.
So it could be right that Zambia is not developed because people are not well represented.
Prove it to me. This is social science. Give me the data. Okay? Give me the survey that was conducted. This is social science, Bwana. We called it at the university. It has rules. He who asserts, like we say in law, he who asserts must prove. So the one who is asserting that we need women representation, youth and people living with disabilities in order to develop or to show that we have the reason why we are not developed, prove it. So you see why I'm not interested in the other dimension of this and this and that. I want to use social science methodology to prove an argument. That's what I want. And if Upnd can prove that to me, they'll be my guests. I'll be one of the people championing this process. Am I asking for too much? No. Am I entitled to raise these concerns? Yes, as a citizen. I was there, John, when UNIP lost the election in 1991. I was there. And I could see the signs that UNIP was going to lose an election. I was the head of department in Lusaka City Council. Okay? I was there in 2011 when MMD lost the election to PF. I was there. And I was an active participant. I was there in 2021 as an active participant when PF lost the election to Upnd. So, if you have seen a person die, you are old enough to see a person who is dying, and you go and visit them at the hospital 2-3 times. From your experience, you can tell that we have to pray to God that he or she can be given another week or so. But dying, because we have seen the signs of people that die.
What are you seeing? What are the signs you're seeing? Sounds like you're seeing some signs. That's what you're telling me.
I'm saying that if Upnd insists on abandoning where its fortunes lie, which is the economic recovery program, and shifts its attention and all the energy to this constitutional making process, it's digging a grave for itself. That's what I'm saying. The people want to see Upnd succeed in the economic recovery program. Not 100%, but at least by the end of this year, all of us should be saying, oh my God, if these guys are given another term, I think they can turn this country around. That's what Edgar gave the Zambian people the constitution in 2016. Why did they not vote him in 2021? What is wrong with the people? Why is history, even contemporary history, so difficult? Edgar marshaled, you remember he was so populistic about the constitution that when he was assenting to the bill, he actually went to the Heroes Stadium, and that place was packed to the brim, to capacity. And he was a hero, and everybody was chanting. And he got a pen and he says, "Today I sign." 2016 to 2021, 5 years later, they voted him out. Why? Because the constitution didn't matter. Why? Because he didn't attend to what mattered. And what mattered? High cost of living, fuel prices, skyrocketing dollar. That is what mattered to the Zambian people, not the constitution.
We'll come to the economic side of it, but I've got a final question to ask you with regards to the constitution, and it's whether or not the Zambian constitution needs any amendment, as it is.
The constitution is dynamic. Every constitution has suffered some kind of amendments in the world, except for the British, who don't have a written constitution. But every constitution has suffered some kind of amendments because it embodies the life of society, of a country. Okay? So, yes, but whether or not these are the amendments are required as proposed to inject more life into this country, I'm not sure.
So yes, the constitution needs amendment, is what you're saying.
Yes, it does. But I put a caveat with the active participation of the people. And this is a mistake that all the past administrations have made. They have tried to own the constitution to the exclusion of the people, but purporting to speak in the name of the people. And it has failed. It has failed. And without exception, these are laws of nature. Without exception, if this is done the same way, using the same past formula, it shall fail. If success means that you have succeeded now because you have the numbers, then it means you don't know what success is. Because success must be part of your legacy. It must turn you into somebody immortal after you are gone. Okay?
Welcome back. You're watching this edition of This Day. We are at Economic Front President Wynter Kabimba's office here in Lusaka. Before the break, we were talking about the constitution amendments, but we said we'd talk about the economy as well. I'd like for us to move our attention to that and talk about the state of the country's economy. In August 2022, the Zambian government got onto a program with the International Monetary Fund that would last 38 months. This year, in October, it is coming to a conclusion. The idea was for it to enhance macroeconomic stability, but also leave room for economic growth in this country. We're nearing the end of this program. Was this a good idea for Zambia to get into?
I don't know whether good idea is actually the issue. The issue is, did UPND have a choice? Okay? Did UPND as a new administration have a choice? And I think the answer is no. Given the background to how the economy had floundered under PF, given the background of the type of creditors that UPND had to face when it took over government, given the fact that this is a monocultural economy dependent on copper alone as its foreign exchange earner. Given the fact that the production levels of this country are extremely low to sustain the economy, UPND had no choice but to look to the IMF. But I'll tell you my personal view. I'm not a fan of the IMF. There's no program anywhere in Africa where the IMF program has succeeded. Nowhere. And even they themselves have this in their literature. I saw the IMF under UNIP. I saw the IMF program under MMD, under Levy. I've read about the IMF program in other parts of the world. And Argentina is a country that comes to mind very quickly. Even now, they have applied for an IMF program. The two governments in Argentina, the previous governments, were actually voted out of power on account of the bad effects, the hardships caused to the people by and under the IMF program.
But what about Vietnam?
That's history. Vietnam could be an exception because Vietnam, Jonah, is an extremely productive economy. It's one of the largest economies in Southeast Asia. Okay? I was laughing this morning, during a BBC Business Today program. They actually said that, referring to the visit by Xi Jinping, to Vietnam, they actually said that they make shoes along the street, but those shoes meet the standards of export to the US. Okay? So let's get back to Zambia. So UPND had no choice. The mistake that UPND made was actually to make people believe that the IMF program was going to bring about dividends in 6 months, in 12 months, in 1 year. That's a mistake they made.
But from your tone, it sounds like you don't think that it will bring dividends at all.
No, that I can tell you. You can come and get my last dollar at the end of 2026.
So then it was a useless undertaking.
I'm saying UPND had no choice because, you see, the creditors that we owed money to could only get to the round table with us if the IMF promised that, yes, we are going to give these guys money for debt servicing. So it's actually money gotten from the IMF so that we could service the debts that these guys owe us under some restructured arrangement, which gives us some breathing space to keep some change to invest in other areas. But fundamentally, I'll tell you, what we need here is production more than anything else. Okay? You've got Trump now who has come on the world stage, and he is going to teach African countries a lesson. And I like his statement. We have made Africans lazy. It's very annoying. You think it's racist, but not at all. I like what Yoweri Museveni said. He said, these guys are saying to me that if I go ahead with this pipeline, from Uganda to Kenya, they are going to withdraw aid from me. He said, in fact, one of the problems I have is their aid. That's one of the problems that Uganda has. Aid. And if you've been following, I'm sure you've been at BBC, so you must be tracking, BBC News. Everybody has been saying, what will happen to these poor countries? Because Europe now will be insular in terms of trying to boost its defense spending, budget. And between defending themselves against the perceived Russia as an enemy for the future and giving money to Zambia, what do you think they will choose? They will choose their defense. So we are at a stage where the government must start spending sleepless nights thinking how we are going to catalyze this economy to produce.
How do you think the UPND government is faring in that regard? Because the biggest export earner for the country is copper mining, which has also not been at its best under the years under the UPND, and I mean even the later years of the Patriotic Front, but compounded by an underperforming economy because of debt, compounded by a mining sector that is not performing at optimum level. What does the UPND have to, have a functional Zambia?
No, the UPND is moving at a pace where they have all these headwinds coming from all directions, and to select one and concentrate on one is becoming difficult. That's why my view is that it's no use for them to open this constitutional amendment front. They have enough problems in the economic recovery area. So, firstly, the mining companies in this country have been used, to getting it their way, having it their way. They dictate terms. They dictate how much tax, they have to pay. They dictate, demand moratorium on the tax. They demand, the use of energy next to nothing. And yet they are the biggest consumers of energy. So UPND has come into power within this structure of a neo-colonial economy, which was never structured to serve its own people.
But they've got the power.
Okay? They've got the power, but that power is limited. And I'll tell you why the power is limited. And I'll give you examples. Zimbabwe today is still suffering Western sanctions purely on one account, because it got its land back for its people. The owners of the land, the West has slapped sanctions. They have maintained those sanctions. At first they were saying, because of Mugabe, Mugabe is gone now. Emerson Mnangagwa thought that they would lift the sanctions, zero. Because the land has gone back to the people. The people fought for that land. Like Mugabe said, our struggle, our liberation struggle was for land, nothing else. South Africa has just enacted the land distribution bill, whatever act, whatever they call it.
Land expropriation.
Land expropriation. To give land to create some equitable distribution of land. The US has threatened sanctions and given the refugee status to Muzungus that are there to go to the US because you are suffering under Africans who are demanding an asset which is their own, God given to them. They didn't get it from anybody. So, those are the lessons of African countries. You remember the issue in Burkina Faso or Niger, where they threw out the French ambassador after the coup. What did France do? We don't recognize that government, so our ambassador is not coming back. In other people's country, you choose your ambassador to remain there. But finally, when they realize that these boys mean business, they withdrew the ambassador.
What you are suggesting is that there's no way out.
No, I'm saying there is a way out now. We have seen a glimmer of light which is coming up now. I want to see how sustainable it is. We've seen what is happening in Burkina Faso. They killed Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso in 1985-86, thinking that they have killed the idea. There is a much more revolutionary Thomas Sankara today in the name of Ibrahim Traore. Okay? Worse than, I'm sure they think, why did we kill Thomas Sankara? Maybe it was more manageable than Ibrahim Traore. You have 77-year-old lady next door here in Namibia who has become president, who is asking relevant questions. If Namibians need a visa to go to the US, why are Americans and other Western countries walking in and out of Namibia as if it is their bedroom?
But, and I hear you, but
okay.
It sounds like you're painting a picture
of
and highlighting every reason why people can assume that the UPND government has failed, because you're not giving them as an example of progress in any of the examples that you've given.
No, let's not lose this argument. You asked me the question about the UPND recovery program and what they could do. And I'm giving you a historical context. I'm a student of history myself, so I believe that every situation has a historical context. Firstly, you asked me about the IMF. I told you UPND had no choice but to get into this IMF program. Do I believe in it? No. Okay? You asked me the question on the mining industry. I've told you the mines have had it their way. They are spoiled kids.
But there are people elsewhere who are able to stand up to that kind of power, just not here.
Yes. What I'm hoping for is that the lessons in other countries can resonate here. That's my hope. That's my honest hope. Because if we don't go in that direction, very soon, we'll be rushing into Burkina Faso. The way we are talking about Rwanda, okay? I made a statement one time, President Kagame came here, I don't know if you remember, and he met ECA at the State House. You know what ECA said? In that discussion, very serious discussion, he says, we want to come and learn from you how you have managed to keep Kigali a clean city. Huh? Really? You don't know how to clean your house unless you go and see Kagame's house? You don't know how to clean your city unless you go to Kigali? How can you get anything done with the president with that mindset? Shocking. In front of cameras. I don't know whom we thought he was pleasing. We want to come to Kigali to come and learn how you have kept your city clean. It's like you are looking at a clean friend, nicely dressed, like you. And then I say, Mwana, I want to come and see how you take a bath and how you dress up.
Let's look at...
And you are speaking as head of state. Guys, it isn't kind of serious.
Let's look at the economy and the way it is at the moment. We've got an exchange rate, and I'm talking about the microeconomic indicators, the exchange rate which is running away. We've got inflation, which is also quite high, low energy supply in the country, and I'm talking about electricity. And most recently, major challenges even in petroleum products that we've seen in the country. There was actually a short supply of petroleum products on the market just a few months ago. Does this mean the UPND government is failing this country?
Look, failure is not a very good word because failure is conclusive. Okay?
Not that they've failed, but are they failing the people?
Yeah, but let me just say this, that failure is a very conclusive, adjective or noun. Because once you say, uja felu kauja, niche exam kwa sira, he's not going to write again. Okay? So, you keep trying. You don't keep failing. You keep trying in order to succeed. So, what, in my view, UPND ought to do is to enhance its economic programs. The issue, this year, they could be lucky. There's a bit of maize, not a bumper harvest, as you would hear them describe it. There's just a bit of maize. The rainfall pattern was still very poor across the country. So there are certain spots where you get some maize. It means that the demand of for mini meal from the chigayo, from the windmill, from the hammer, from the milling plants will actually go down. Because I've got a field at my farm for my mother. I don't have to buy a mini meal this year. Okay? Chikolete here has got maize at his farm. He doesn't have to queue up for a bag of mini meal. So that demand will certainly go down. And when and if the demand goes down, I'm not an economist, but my common sense says, then you may see a reduction in the price of mini meal. Petroleum products, UPND has fallen in the same trap as PF of dealing with the oil company suppliers that I dealt with in PF. The first thing that Michael Sata did when he came to power was to set up the ERB Commission of Inquiry, which I chaired. And Guy Piri was my, my deputy. And we put that, together. We found a lot of debt, a lot of corruption. And some of the participants in that corruption are in the UPND government today. Surprisingly to me. Okay? So, UPND was proposing a very good formula. We are going to cut off all the middlemen. Because everybody wants a cut at each stage. Brilliant idea. I'm not sure if they have done that. I'm not sure if they have done that. Okay? And I write elaborately about the ERB Commission of Inquiry in my book, which is yet to be published. And the people come to see how Zambian citizens, Jonah, can connive. I can't do it myself. I can't connive with a foreign entity against my own country, against my own people. I don't have to be president. But somehow, in Zambia, it's normal. In a third world country, it's very normal. For a PS, for a minister, for whoever, to actually get a commission. And these commissions are not even much. They get these commissions, when they come, when they get out of these government jobs, they just die as paupers. But they sold their country, to a foreigner. I've never seen myself somebody, very few that I've seen dying as a rich minister. President Sapatos are bender, they are wearing sandals even at a wedding because their shoe is difficult to buy anymore. And yet when they were shining from a $10,000 bribe, commission, $10,000. That's how much worth some of our ministers are. That's how much worth some of our PSCs are. $10,000 against your country of 752,000 square kilometers. What is wrong with our leaders? What is wrong with us?
In conclusion,
we can conclude before you hear more.
In conclusion, as we wind up, what is the best way to turn this situation around between now and the next election?
I'm not in the UPND government, so I.
But you're an opposition party president with an alternative of how the country could be led.
Well, I can tell you, if you read our EF manifesto, we are very, very clear. Okay? Firstly, I'll tell you that for as long as we do not have a system of agriculture that graduates the progression of people from peasant farming, emergent farmer, and commercial farmer, indigenous, agriculture will not take off. It will not. Secondly, for as long as we have a banking sector which is exclusively foreign, there's no economy you can build on that banking sector. Where if Jonah or Wynter has to get a loan, that must be approved in London or in Joburg in South Africa. You can't, bwana. And there is no country, developed country, which is structured that way. When you go to America, you find Citibank, you will not find a German bank there. Ichitachan. German bank is in Germany. Okay? You've seen the Chinese, when they came here as major investors, what did they do? They set up, China-Zambia Bank. You have seen the Indians, when they came here, to be serious, what did they do? Indo-Zambia Bank. That's what they've done. But us, we believe that you can have a foreign-owned banking sector which keeps on celebrating, 70 years of service unto you. Unto who? Whom have you served in 70 years? Which ordinary Zambian can say that they are rich because of the loans they got or facilities they got from the bank? Zero. So that's another problem that the Zambians see. But overall, it's leadership. It's leadership. The sooner we resolve the leadership question, as to who should lead and who is disqualified to lead, the better for the country. I asked one group of lay preachers, I said, how do we end up with corrupt, or politicians when they come from your congregations? Mubaziba. How do we end up with them? So we need Bwana to resolve the leadership question, which everybody takes very lightly. Anyway, if this program were a phone-in program, you would have heard, Wynter, you are just bitter, Lastly, I gave an example last week about Sudan. Because of this, they call it what in Bemba, Ichimpwena, Umunguru, of not taking national issues seriously. I said, Sudan today, and you know it, Sudan today has over 20 million of its citizens displaced. 20 million. And these aid agencies can't even cope to feed them. The story, the way it started, this calamity, was because an association of doctors, medical doctors, bafana bamena, bachaya pama WhatsApp na let's meet and demonstrate. And the Western countries, they said that this is an opportunity for us to get rid of al-Bashir. He's causing the war in Sudan. There was an American volunteer who was killed in Sudan, and that became, the greatest iniquity committed by al-Bashir. Al-Bashir is gone. 3 days ago, you heard that 400 people in a refugee camp in Darfur were killed. 400. Khartoum is deserted. So we should not play around. We are building a country. And all of us must contribute meaningfully and seriously to the construction of a civilized Zambia. Not for ourselves, but for future generations. What we are seeing now, if it doesn't change, it will be one government after another.
Thank you so much for giving us those insights. Economic Front President Wynter Kabimba.
Thank you, Jonah. And thank you for visiting us here at WM Kabimba and Company.